Hello and welcome to our training course today. This is on documents and reports configuration. We still have a minute before the official start, so I'm not going to go until the top of the hour, which is coming up. Hello and welcome to our training course. This is documents and reports configuration. And this is another one of the short training sessions dealing with aspects of application administration. In this particular lesson, we're going to be covering the knowledge needed to understand how to configure the settings that control the user experience around document merge and reporting, and other aspects of handling documents, including upload. And this includes things like the control of file sizes, the number of transactions, and timeouts. Now, to do this, we can best understand documents and reports configuration settings by starting to look at how they impact a user's experience. And so here I'm logging on to Sage CRM as a user. My starting page has an interactive dashboard. The gadgets that we see are drawing their data sources from reports, and we can see in fact that there is a report with a graph embedded on the right hand side of the screen. We need to consider what controls the performance of those gadgets. They're drawing, as I said, the information from reports, so we need to think about whether the correct amount of memory has been allocated to enable users to pull data back from the browsers. If I see here, I can click on the graph to launch the full report. And this chart, has it been streamed from memory, or has it been saved first as an image and then embedded into the chart? We might be choosing one way over another. Now, this isn't a very large report, but are there limits to what users should be able to pull from the server? And a few users running very complex reports could really change the experience of other users in the system because of the demand on resources. We can run reports directly and not just via the dashboard. So if we return back to the dashboard and then go off to look at reports and a listing of companies, so I'm going to choose a report here. And I can choose whatever criteria that I want to use. And you'll notice that I can run this as HTML, as a PDF file, or I can export it to Excel or a CSV file. These are things that are controlled within the experience of the configuration screens. Now, if I choose HTML, I've gone and run this as an HTML report. I've filtered my search, but this report could have contained the details of thousands of records. So how much time does it take to generate a report? What size of document should be sent to the browser? Should there be a timeout for the generation of this? And what if I had in fact launched this in the context of a mobile device rather than a desktop device? Now I'm going to close the report and have a look at a company. And here you can see that I can generate on the right hand side, you'll see that there's an action button that says summary report. And this will generate a PDF report. And this document is built by pulling data from the system. It generates an XML document that is then processed to create a PDF file on the server before we then download it to the user's machine. So there's a number of different steps involved here, each consuming resources as we decide certain actions should be taken. Each action, whatever the user does, consumes resources, and they are even within the context of a mail merge, theoretically competing with other users for those same resources. And if we have a look at a group of records and we look at a list of leads, we can see that we can export this to a file. And I have a choice of exporting it as a CSV file, an XLS file, or a text file. These are files created on the server before they can then be downloaded. This has implications on what it means to write onto the server. It requires permissions on the server to create those files, as well as thinking about the size of files that can be processed. Now, I've downloaded my CSV file, and that could have contained thousands of rows of data. And is this something that all users should be permitted to do? Now I'm going to close this, and back in CRM, I can finalize the recording of the export. And so if I look now at another group, so I've just done that, I'm going to look at this time at companies rather than lead records. And I'm going to select the CFO one, which is the second one. And here I'm going to carry out a mail merge. And this mail merge and the experience of this really does depend on the documents and reports configuration settings. So if I click through and start the process of the mail merge, I can carry out the merge to a PDF file, and it's touching on the storage of data. So we think about how we're going to be creating something in the end. We're pulling data from the database and we're creating files as well. This all has a demand on the resources. And imagine that we are doing this against a group. Not just one user is doing this, but several users are doing this, and we are competing for those resources. To make it a little bit easier on my system, I'm not going to create a communication record, but I'm now going to continue. Now here I'm going to switch over to the system administrator screens to look at the settings that have controlled this particular demo that I've been doing. So the user experience that I've had has been controlled by the user settings elsewhere in the system. To have a look at those, I need to log on as the system administrator and navigate to the admin screens. Once I'm in the admin screens, I'm going to click on the email and documents area and then down into the documents and reports configuration. You can see that we've come down into administration, email and documents, documents and reports configuration. This then is the screen, and we can start considering all of the different fields that we see in front of us. The first set of fields here are all aspects of thinking about where files are stored. So merging, anything that is merged needs to be stored. If you are generating files which will then be exported, they will also be stored within the library. So we need to know where our physical root directory for mail merge documents is and what's the location for anything to do with mail merge as well. And you can see here that these are the paths to the directories that we want to use. And we even have a root directory, as it says there, for reports. That idea of the physical reports are because it's possible to create your own HTML and ASP files, which are then invoked in the context of reports as well. You can also, there's some ASP objects or COM objects which make use of files, and they have an assumed location that the location you're pulling in sections from is in fact from the reports subfolder, but you can change that path within there. That's very much a development topic. But if we look at the next set of files, as we're doing work on the server, we may have configuration and security settings on the server to say, well, the standard anonymous or user accessing Sage CRM in terms of the ISU, the IUSR user, the website user, shouldn't have rights over the disk space, shouldn't have rights over the file structures. So we need to provide a local user that has rights to be able to carry out tasks on the local machine. This is a local machine administrator that can be used to work with any of the folders there. So we'll need to specify an impersonated user, user's domain, and also, if necessary, well, we will need to specify the domain if necessary, and then the password for that user as well. So we have all of the credentials needed to be able to do those tasks. When we come to the actual experience of running the reports, we need to think about the timeouts that are involved in this. So we've got the set of fields here, which are really all about controlling that experience of how long do we wait in seconds before a timeout error is displayed. That's the reports query timeout. And how many seconds should it wait before a report is attempting to be built? So you might run the server, but you might run the query on against the server, but are you still building the report before the timeout occurs? And so this is another aspect of how long you should wait. And if that's the amount that you're waiting, should you also then be able to specify a timeout, or sorry, an exemption, I should say, for the system administrators when it comes to the size of file. Now, I'll talk about the limitations in a moment, but we've got this sense that two other fields are present. This is the idea of the sizing, the desktop and mobile size limitations, but we can exempt a system administrator from those so that they can always get the full fat reports that are needed, the full fire hose of data from the system. Now, I've got a couple of other things just to mention here or one more thing to mention before I start having a look at the idea of hiding the sizing of transactions. You can see that there's an option which says reports export visible for non-admin users and summary reports enabled. This is controlling whether or not you get the sight of on a entity summary screen, like a company summary screen or a person summary screen, you will see a summary report. If you can turn that off so nobody can access those by using summary reports enabled to be no. And you can also turn off the idea of the exports so that you don't allow users to generate reports in PDF or spreadsheet format. So this is another way of limiting the load on your particular system simply by removing a particular feature which has that implication. Now, our next stage to think about is those two fields which talk about the size limitations. Now, Sage CRM HTML reports are generated through an XML stage. So we first of all generate a report as XML with an associated style sheet XLST file that will then process the end result into the finished document. So it's generated in the form of XML. Now, Sage CRM, although we're saying in the setting is that it's the size of it, it's not measuring it in HTML, it's measuring the originating XML. And so this is the size limit in kilobytes for the report for desktop clients. And it's an approximation. And what we can do is put in an amount here that prevents very large reports running and taking all the bandwidth. Now, connected to that, and typically if you have large reports, you'd be aiming to put into a figure around 60 megabytes or 61,440 kilobytes. And there are some information inside the documentation that talks about the upper limits that you should use as well. But if I click onto the next slide, can think about the way in which we would run a report in the context of a mobile device, because very often users do want to be able to take their phones and to be able to generate a report in the context of where they are, so they can perhaps see information that they would otherwise not be able to access. Now, the mobile size limitation is a way of ensuring that you're not going to allow users to ruin their own experience by generating reports which are too large. And this is the size limitation in kilobytes for the report for mobile clients. It prevents very large reports running and taking all the bandwidth and ruining the experience for the customer, for the user. Now, the next thing to look at is some settings which are also about PDF reports. Obviously, we've talked about a couple of those fields which have implications if we are generating our reports to PDF. We've considered whether or not, for example, whether a user should be able to access a button to generate a summary report, or whether or not we should be able to export anything as a report is run to a PDF file. Now, these fields that we see here then are to do with a component called FOP that generates the PDF reports on the server. You can see that in the example path that was given on the screen. So first of all is the idea of the converter parameter string, which is the parameters used for calling the program. And we've got some placeholders in here which stand for the source and destination file names and shouldn't be removed. And then there's also something called another parameter called -q, which enables quiet mode, which suppresses information messages. Error messages would still be generated potentially as you're creating the document. The next one is the path to that, and you would typically need to change that if you were directed to by the support team, pointing to a different FOP BAT file, which invokes the FOP converter, which generates the PDF files. The maximum amount of memory is also under control here, and the default setting is a gig, expressed in megabytes. If we have a look at the next group of settings that control the user experience, we can see that these are very much concerned with the export of files and the export and the generation of emails associated with groups. So the export to file available on the search or a group page, this is expressing the type of users that can see and access that button. I'll be covering quite a lot about that in the lesson that discusses groups and the user experience of groups. So I'm not going to go into that right now. And again, we've been looking at aspects of emails as well earlier on in this cycle of training. And so that there are lessons available that discuss emailing as well, and where you can invoke emails from. If we look at these 4 files here, where we've got allow executable files to be uploaded, allow file name extensions to upload, allowed file name extensions, I should say, system administrators can configure a whitelist or an allow list to indicate the file types that users can upload into Sage CRM. And so if a file name extension is not included within the allow list, then the upload of the file is going to be blocked. Now, those limitations are enforced in Sage CRM when a user uploads files either to the Shared Documents tab or attaches files to a calendar task, an email message, or to a communication using the Add File button or Drop Files Here to attach them button, or even files, emails inside Sage CRM using the Import Emails button. This is the thing that kicks in to protect the system. Now, we're using a whitelist for Sage CRM rather than a blacklist approach because it provides a safer control of file uploads. It only allows specified file types to be uploaded, and any attempts to upload files not on the list is going to be rejected. In addition, we can allow executables into the file if they're included in the whitelist, the allowed file name extensions, and if there is a file name extension that is considered to be an executable file, then you also have to allow the flag, allow executable files to be uploaded, to be set to yes. Now, that means that certain file types are automatically treated as executables, so they're COM files, CPL files, DEX files, DLL files, EXEs, etc. And there's a list of these in the documentation of what we consider to be executables. But that's one thing. Sage CRM also has the ability to detect executable files regardless of any changes made to their file name extensions, because what we do is actually examine the file's header to determine its type. So we're not relying just on the extension. We are also relying on the fact that we examine the header to see that this isn't actually just because you've renamed a file to docx, it doesn't mean that it's not an executable. So we're checking the top of the file as well as it's uploaded. Now, we can see this in action, this blocking of files on the screen. Now, to demonstrate it, I've switched over into a user screen. I'm looking at a Shared Documents tab. We can imagine that our user is a support user and wants to deliberately upload a utility, an executable, into the documents file so that all colleagues can access the file to send to customers. Now, so I'm going to upload this file. You can see it's clearly an exe file. It's actually the Sage CRM's license key update executable. And so if I try and run that, you'll see that it's been blocked. So you'll notice that it's blocked with a message on the screen. If we return back to the documents and reports configuration, we can deal with the remaining bits of the lesson. Now, before we do this, there are 2 fields still outstanding to be considered, and they're to do with mail merge and the mail merge experience. Now, the length of time a mail merge takes is dependent on a number of factors. So you first of all think about the number of records that are being merged. And if you're performing a mail merge to a large list of records, so a long list of companies involved in a marketing campaign, the mail merge will clearly take longer than if you're merging to a small number or a small collection of companies or just a single record. So the more records you have to be merged, the longer it will take. And if you have to perform a merge with a large number of records, it's a good idea when you think about scheduling your behavior so that it's outside the core business time, so you're not impacting people as a very large merge takes place. So other things, other factors, is the type of template that you're using for the merge. So if you're using a single page template, which is only using very simple text in there, that will be faster than if you're trying to run a multi-page merge, perhaps pulling in information with a nested merge from the orders and orders items table, or the quotes and quote items table. And if you're including images as well within the document, your machine is also a factor in how we can get a good experience of the mail merge. So the more RAM that's available on the machine, the faster the merge will take place, and the processor as well also has an implication. So if we specifically look at this, we can boost the amount of memory that we have for the mail merge by adjusting the max mail merge memory setting here within the administration, email and documents and reports configuration screen. You'll see that I've got 1024 there. That's looking at the number of kilobytes that I've got, megabytes that I've got, but I can actually increase that from its default of 1 gigabyte. Megabytes is 1024, but we could move up to we can move up greater than that. Sage CRM from 2024 R1 onwards uses a 64-bit Java virtual machine, so there's almost no limit as to what we can put in there, except we have to consider the system's overall memory capacity before we set an excessively high limit. And you can see that the idea of the mail merge timeout, that's the number of mail merge users who might be working on this. We also have this question of how many users could possibly be carrying out a merge at any one time. Now, this just about brings us to the end of what I wanted to think about for today's lesson. So we've looked at documents and reports configuration today, and we've seen how that then fits into all of the other aspects that we were looking at earlier on, including information about the creation of mail merge documents and their templates. So let's see if anyone has got any questions. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you at the next training session. Goodbye.